The general public, as well as aviation enthusiasts, look forward to the EAA's Ford Tri-Motor visiting their town. A ride on a genuine vintage airliner is an exciting and memorable event for young and old alike. However, we could never succeed in presenting these fine aircraft to the public without the help of good volunteers such as yourselves. This presentation is designed to help you maintain a safe environment where you and the folks coming to see and perhaps ride on these aircraft have a safe and enjoyable tri-motor experience. By following our safety procedures, you will be able to ensure that a safe and fun experience will be available to all participants. EAA sends out 2 Ford Tri-Motor aircraft on tour throughout the year, and you will be working with one of the two. Although the aircraft are very similar, there are some differences, and those differences will be pointed out to you in this presentation. So now, without further ado, let me introduce the 2 aircraft. This is November Charlie 8407, EAA's first tri-motor. She is a 1929 Model 4 ATE, the smaller of the 2 models that the Ford Motor Company built from 1926 through 1933. We refer to her as Little Ford. And this is November Charlie 9645, a 1928 Model 5 ATB. The Model 5 AT aircraft are the larger of the 2 models and were used throughout the 1920s for airline service. We refer to her as Big Ford. Big Ford belongs to the Liberty Air Museum of Port Clinton, Ohio, and is leased to the EAA for the tri-motor tours. The basic ground crew positions are a starter, step handler doorman, photographer, safety guards, ticket handler, and historian safety briefer. All volunteers must wear an orange safety vest. The vest identifies you as an official member of the Tri-Motor ground crew team. The vest signifies that you are authorized to be on the ramp and to work around the aircraft. It also lends you an aura of authority that will help the passengers and visitors respect your job as a safety officer. Much of what we do to promote safe operations is driven by the use of good common sense. For example, no matter how busy you feel that you are, wait for the aircraft to park before approaching it. Never approach the aircraft while it is approaching you. Do not be tempted to take shortcuts. Keep the operation safe and professional. Generally, the aircraft should be chalked while it is parked. The captain will let you know at the beginning of the tour whether it should be chalked under both wheels, just one, or not at all. Regardless, wait until the propeller has come to a complete stop before attempting insertion. Do not remove chocks until the captain is seated in the cockpit. The captain will signal the starter when to remove the chocks. Remove the chocks only on the captain's direction. While inserting the chocks, make certain that your hand and fingers are not between the chock and the tire. The aircraft can move forward or aft, and it often does when the pilot gets off the brakes. If you are careless, guess what happens to your hand or fingers? I'll give you a hint. It hurts. Now let's look at the different ground crew positions and their responsibilities. The bench handler. As the passengers enter the aircraft, they will step up onto the yellow bench. The bench handler should remind the passengers to keep their heads down as they enter the aircraft and keep their heads down as they pass up and down the aisle. The cabin ceiling is lower in the mid-cabin area to accommodate the wing box structure. It is essential to keep one's head down to avoid a bump on the head. During placement of the bench, make sure that it is close to, but not under the belly of the aircraft. This is to prevent a passenger from getting a foot caught in the gap between the door and the bench. The bench handler should place the bench slightly toward the tail of the aircraft rather than perfectly centered under the door. Since this is a tail dragger aircraft, the aisle is slanted downhill, and it is easier to exit the aircraft when the bench is oriented just aft of the center of the doorway. This slide shows a bird's eye view of Little Ford's doorway. It is squarish and easy to properly gauge the placement of the bench. However, Big Ford's doorway is oval. Set the bench and try it out yourself to see where its best position should be. Practice placing the bench and enter and exit the aircraft yourself before the rides begin to see if you have it right. The door handler should always secure the door open with its fastener during passenger boarding or disembarkation. A stiff breeze or the prop wash or jet blast from other aircraft on the ramp will cause the door to slam shut if it is not secured with its fastener. This can hurt anyone in its way, and it doesn't do the door any good either. Don't cut corners and use your body to block the door open, because if you have to move away from the doorway for any reason, the door can slam shut when you step away. Both aircraft have hook fasteners to keep the doors in an open position. Big Ford's hook is located on the fuselage and attaches to the door, and Little Ford's hook is on the inside of the door and fastens to the aircraft's gear leg. This is Little Ford's hook placement for securing the door in the open position. The picture was taken standing in front of the gear leg, looking toward the tail. The fuselage is on the right, and the hook is being clipped to the eye on the gear leg fairing. Big Ford's hook is permanently mounted on the fuselage just under the window. It has a trigger release much like that used on a dog's leash. The hook is short but will swing free so that you can clip it to the eye that is on the outside edge of the door near its handle. It is very important that you remember to stow the hooks in their keepers before flight. Remember to store Little Ford's hook on the inside of the door before closing the door for flight. Remember to store Big Ford's hook onto the eye on the fuselage when the door is shut for flight. Safety guards. The tail safety guard makes sure that no visitors or passengers wander behind the aircraft during passenger boarding. Any additional guards can assure that visitors and passengers do not wander off into prohibited areas of the operations ramp. The guards may also assist in directing passengers to and from the aircraft as necessary. They may also volunteer to take pictures of the passengers as they begin or end the ride. If you have enough ground crew, you can assign photography duties to separate volunteers, rather than have the safety guards do both. In all cases, use your good common sense. You can help make the Tri-Motor visit a friendly and fun experience for the passengers and visitors. Between rides while the aircraft is shut down, encourage them to view the aircraft from all sides and to take pictures. It's all right for them to stand in front of the propellers for those Kodak moments, but make sure no one tries to move a propeller. Volunteer to take pictures of them. Visitors and passengers are welcome to enter the aircraft, but should be asked to stay out of the cockpit. When it is time to board passengers for a flight, usher visitors away from the aircraft to a safe viewing area. Don't allow children or adults to climb, sit, or lean on the aircraft's tail surfaces. The safety briefer and historian. The safety briefing is an FAA requirement and must be completed before each flight. Part of the Tri-Motor experience is an oral history of the aircraft. If you always wanted to be a distinguished public speaker, this is it. Follow our script so that you have the facts right and enjoy. But not to worry, each of our captains know the history of the Ford Tri-Motors and can give history briefings if there are no hams or actors in your group. The volunteer assigned to safety briefing duties is expected to use the safety briefing card. There are 7 safety items that must be read off the card to the passengers. The notes located at the bottom of the card are not intended to be read to the passengers. The notes are for the briefer and refer to situations that the briefer may come across, such as: children who have not reached the age of 2 years can travel for free and may legally be flown sitting on an adult's lap. Tell the adult to fasten the seatbelt around his or her waist first and then place the child on their lap. Do not fasten the seatbelt around both child and adult. This is to prevent possible injury to the child should the aircraft come to a sudden stop. We have booster cushions for small children aged 2 years and older. Ask whether or not the cushion is wanted, and if it is, ask a responsible adult to carry the cushion to and from the plane and to return it to you after the flight. A seatbelt extender may be provided to passengers who request one. The extenders are located in the seat back pockets of the last seats just inside the door of the cabin of Big Ford, and in the overhead rack just inside the cabin door of Little Ford. However, there are no extenders available for the last seat across from the cabin door of Little Ford. The ticket handler may feel that gathering passengers for their flight may sometimes feel like herding cats. To help keep things straight, make sure that you know what flight is up next. Display the flight number flip card of the flight that you are mustering in a place where the ground crew, passengers, and ticket salesperson can all see it. Keep the flight number up to date. Here is a tip. Flip to the next flight number after each flight taxis out, and have only one person responsible for doing that. As you seat your passengers in the briefing area, Make sure that the flight number and the ticket flight number match. In the example shown here, flight number 11 is being prepared for the next ride. The flip card numbers on the right-hand side of the slide show that the flight number 11 is the next flight to go. On the left side of the slide, the ticket also indicates that the passenger is on flight number 11. If you look closely, you will see 11-2 on this ticket stub. That only means that the passenger holding this ticket was the second person to purchase a ride on flight number 11. But most of the time, you will only see 11, the flight number indicated on the ticket. The best advice I can give you is this: do everything the same way each time. Announce the flight number and seat the passengers. Issue the safety briefing. Talk about the aircraft's history. Take ticket stubs from the passengers' tickets when the passengers are sent out to board the plane. You take the stub, and the passenger keeps the ticket as a souvenir. Flip the flight number as soon as the aircraft leaves the boarding area. Announce the next flight. Repeat. Passenger load. Periodically, check with a ticket salesperson to verify the number of tickets sold for the flight before you begin gathering the passengers. This will save you from a good deal of aggravation. The ticket salesperson may be selling tickets for multiple flights to accommodate groups who wish to be together on the same flight, so sometimes not all of the seats are sold on the flight that you may be ready to muster. The ticket salesperson will also advise you when a flight should be sent out with some empty seats or should be held waiting for additional passengers. Be aware that sometimes a last-minute sale can take place for the flight that you are ready to brief or to actually board. In that case, make sure that the passenger receives a safety briefing before boarding the aircraft. Now, what do you do when you know how many passengers there should be, but you can't find them? This is what I call robbing Peter to pay Paul. The important thing to remember is this: do not allow a flight to leave without every passenger assigned to it on board. If you can't find the missing passengers, borrow the manifest from the ticket salesperson and check off the names of the passengers that you do have. Now you know who is missing. If you still cannot find the missing passengers, look for a standby replacement from the next flight. Have the standby passenger briefed and ready to go in case the missing passenger does not show up before the flight boards. When possible, do not take standbys from more than 2 flights ahead. Remember, if the missing passengers show up after the flight is boarded, they are going to have to fly on the flight that the standbys were originally assigned to. Don't make the mistake of bumping passengers off their assigned flight to accommodate the passengers who missed their flight, because you'll start a domino effect of bumping passengers and end up with very unhappy people, including yourself. Make every effort to find the missing passengers and board the standby passengers at the last minute. If boarding has already commenced and the missing passengers show up at that point, use good judgment and common sense when deciding whether to board the original passengers or the standby passengers at that time. However, don't make the standby passengers get off the plane if the missing ones show up at that point. Again, use common sense and good judgment. What if I have too many passengers assigned to the flight? First, confirm that all have the correct flight number on their ticket. If they do, then get the manifest for the flight you are working and the following flight and check names. Enlist the help of the ticket salesperson. Often, the extra passengers are assigned to the following flight, but the ticket salesperson inadvertently wrote the wrong flight number onto their tickets. Refueling. No passengers are permitted on board the plane during refueling. The captain will tell the starter and the ticket salesperson how many flights will be flown before refueling takes place. The starter position. The starter signals the captain when it is safe to start the aircraft's engines and alerts the captain to hazards prior to taxi. Only the starter and no other ground crew should be in front of the aircraft's wing during an engine start. As starter, it is your responsibility to make certain that all crew and passengers are clear of the area before starting engines. It is also your responsibility to support safe ramp operations, and that includes following our starting procedures. The starter will issue signals to the captain for starting engines, beginning with engine number 1 on the aircraft's left side, and then moving to its right side to start engines number 2 and 3. Here is the procedure for positioning yourself to issue starting signals to the captain. Pick up the fire extinguisher and position yourself to start engine number 1 by walking out to the tip of the aircraft's left wing. Then move forward, parallel with the aircraft's nose until you can see the captain's face when he is looking at you. You should now be standing at the apex of an imaginary triangle. Do not move in closer to the cockpit. Stay out and in line with the wing tip. Is it far from the propeller? Yes, it is, and that is the point. Not only does it guarantee your safety, it is easy for you to be consistently in the right place so that the captain can see you at all times. If you can see the captain's eyes, he can see you. Trust me, the captain feels a lot better being able to see you. Once you are properly positioned, look for feet beneath the aircraft's belly. If you can see feet, then you know that crew and passengers are still milling about and it is not safe to start the engines. Take another look before signaling an engine start. Make sure the chocks have been removed. Wait for the captain to look at you. When you see the captain is ready, point to engine number 1 and rotate your wrist to indicate that it is safe to turn the prop. Once you see that the engine is running properly, in other words, there is no drama with flames spitting from the engine, pick up the fire extinguisher and move to the aircraft's right side to start engines number 2 and number 3. Stay out of the no transgression zone on your way to the aircraft's right side. This ensures your safety and allows the captain to keep you in sight at all times. If you get careless and cut corners by skirting the aircraft closer, the captain cannot see you at all. That's a big nose on this aircraft, and it blocks forward vision. You will start engines number 2 and 3 from the aircraft's right side. Your position is a little different for the right side of the aircraft. Again, position yourself out at the wingtip, but this time you will have to place yourself along the leading edge of the wing at a 90-degree angle to the aircraft's nose. If you use the triangle position on this side of the aircraft, the captain will have a very difficult time seeing your signals, and it will also be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to see the captain's face or eyes. Make sure you can see the captain and not the person who may be sitting in the right seat. Again, stay out at the wing tip. Issue the start signal for the number 2 nose engine, followed by engine number 3. If one or more engines have been started and you realize that chocks are still in place, signal a complete shutdown of all engines. The shutdown signal is to move your hand across your throat in a slashing or cutting motion. There are no acceptable exceptions. Shut them down, all of them, and remove the chocks once the propellers have stopped, and then start over. Go back out to the left wingtip, position yourself properly, assure the area is clear, and then begin the engine start procedures. Do not approach the cockpit window under any circumstances when the engines are running, even if only one engine is running. Signal a ground crew member to enter the cabin to find out what the captain wants. You are needed to guard the front of the aircraft. Remain at your post. It is the starter's responsibility to watch for traffic and other hazards and alert the captain to their presence. Stand still and point at the hazard. Keep your eyes on the captain. The captain will wait for a signal that it is okay to taxi. The correct okay to taxi signal is a salute. Do not use the ambiguous thumbs-up signal. A salute cannot be mistaken for any other signal, and it also looks professional and pretty spiffy when executed in a crisp manner. Another useful signal is the crossed wrists over your head to indicate stop, stay there, don't move. Here's a tip. When not giving signals to the captain, keep your hands at your sides to avoid miscommunication. The Pratt & Whitney R985 engines are not susceptible to carburetor fires, but if one would occur, here is where you would see it. However, if a fire occurs, here is what you should do. Plant your feet. Do not move toward the aircraft. Instead, signal the captain that the engine is on fire. Do this by pointing to the offending engine with one hand and fan your other hand rapidly back and forth, pointing stiff-armed to the ground. No doubt your excitement will clue the captain in on what is going on. Signal your ground crew to reposition themselves at the cabin door and to open it. Then everybody, wait. Pay attention. Do not move toward the engine. The captain will likely cycle the propeller several times to suck the flame back up into the cylinders where it belongs. If you approach the engine right away, the captain cannot do this. If you approach the engine, you can make a relatively minor issue a major problem. You may be badly injured and/or cause the loss of the aircraft. Let the captain work on the problem. Do not approach the engine until the captain abandons the cockpit and the propellers have come to a complete stop. These two steps are crucial to your safety. An attempt to extinguish the fire with the fire extinguisher may be made at that point. If the captain is unable to extinguish the fire, he will leave the cockpit. If he abandons the cockpit, signal to the ground crew to evacuate the aircraft. The ground crew is expected to leave the passengers well away from the aircraft. Count noses to assure that all ground crew and passengers are accounted for and call 911. The captain will have contacted ATC to call for firefighting assistance before he leaves the cockpit. If the fire fully involves the engine, move everyone well away from the area. Remember, the engine is hanging below a fuel tank, which is located in the wing. All ground crew should act as safety guards and crowd control during the tour stop. Keep your eyes wide open. Watch for passengers, visitors who may wander into the area during engine start procedures. Watch for other aircraft and vehicles moving about on the ramp. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't just focus on the Ford Tri-Motor. Watch the environment around you. And smile. You are an EAA ambassador. All ground crew members are expected to follow our safety procedures. If you see a risk behavior, correct it. Prevent safety creep. Don't become a part of a problem. Help us provide a safe environment for volunteers and passengers. We hope that you enjoy hosting the Tri-Motor, and we gratefully thank you for your support.